Welcome back to another deep dive. We are so glad you are here with us today to unpack a story that, well, it really challenges the way you might think about pop culture.
Oh, absolutely. Pop culture, fame, the whole machine.
Right. And those narratives we just sort of casually accept as historical truth. We're looking at a really comprehensive Wikipedia article today detailing the life, the career, and the incredibly complex legacy of the American singer Cass Elliott.
Yeah, and it's a legacy that for decades now has been dominated by a single, frankly, a really bizarre rumor.
Totally.
It is basically a textbook example of how a person's actual lived reality can just be completely eclipsed by the mythology built around them.
Yeah.
You know, by the press, by the music industry.
Which is exactly why our mission today is to dismantle those cartoonish pop culture rumors. We really want to retire that nickname she secretly hated.
Mama Cass.
Yes, Mama Cass. And instead, introduce you to the brilliant, resilient, and deeply complex woman named Ellen Naomi Cohen. Okay, let's unpack this. Because the sheer amount of surprising history in her life story, it offers a lot of insight, especially for anyone who has ever felt, fundamentally misunderstood by the world around them.
I think that's exactly the right lens for this.
Yes, sir.
This deep dive really operates on two levels. I mean, yes, it is a biography.
Yeah.
But it's also this fascinating look at the construction of celebrity mythology. As we go through her life, I really want you to consider how rumors are manufactured. Why do they manage to stick in the public consciousness for so long?
Yeah.
And why was a woman with literally a generation-defining voice so relentlessly reduced to just commentary about her physical image?
Right. It's so frustrating. But to really understand her, we have to start in Baltimore.
Right. Back in 1941.
Yes, exactly. Way before she was a music icon. She was born Ellen Naomi Cohen to Russian Jewish immigrants, and her family experienced some pretty significant financial stress early on.
Yeah, her father tried a bunch of different entrepreneurial ventures. He was really trying to find his footing.
And he eventually found some stability running a lunch wagon.
Serving meals to construction workers.
Right. So you see this foundation of working class hustle. It was instilled in her from a very young age.
And you can absolutely see that hustle in how she actively constructed her persona. I mean, she didn't just sit around and wait for the entertainment industry to mold her.
No, not at all.
Even back in high school, she adopted the name Cass, which, according to the source, a former bandmate, suggested she might have actually borrowed from an actress.
Peggy Cass.
Exactly, Peggy Cass. And then a bit later, she takes the surname Elliott to honor a friend who had passed away.
So she's authoring her own identity long before she ever signs a record contract.
Exactly.
And she chased that dream so relentlessly. I mean, she actually left high school before graduating just to move to New York City. And originally, she was pursuing acting.
Not me.
Right, not music at first. She toured in a musical. She auditioned for a theatrical part that, get this, she actually lost to Barbra Streisand.
Oh, wow. Talk about tough competition.
Right. And she was even working as a cloakroom attendant in Greenwich Village just to physically embed herself in that creative scene.
Just grinding away.
Just grinding. And eventually she finds her way into the booming 1960s folk music world. She's singing in groups like the Big Three and the Mugwumps.
Which is such a fascinating era because the Greenwich Village folk scene at that time, it was highly collaborative, but it was also fiercely competitive.
Yeah.
And somewhat insular, honestly.
Yeah, very cliquey.
Right. Artists were constantly swapping bands. They're sitting in on each other's sets, just trying to find that exact right vocal chemistry that would translate to a record deal.
Right.
It was an environment where talent was definitely paramount, but image was rapidly becoming just as important.
Which brings us to one of the most famous and frankly the strangest legends in music history. The pipe story. Okay, so it's the mid-60s. Cass is trying to secure a spot in this new group that John Phillips is putting together, and they are all down vacationing in the Virgin Islands.
Right.
According to the legend that she propagated, she was just walking through a construction site when she was hit on the head by a falling, thin metal plumbing pipe.
Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. She suffers a concussion, goes to the hospital, and upon recovering, her vocal range has miraculously increased by 3 notes.
I mean, it reads perfectly as a comic book origin story for a pop star.
It totally does, and she fully committed to the bit. In a 1968 interview with Rolling Stone magazine, she swore to the reporter her words, honest to God, that the story was true.
Wow.
She detailed having a bad headache for 2 weeks, followed by this sudden magical ability to sing higher registers. But the reality of where that anecdote actually came from is quite dark.
It really is. What's fascinating here is that the pipe story was a cover. It was just a less humiliating explanation that they manufactured for the media.
Right.
Because friends and collaborators later revealed the real reason she wasn't initially included in the group. John Phillips had been actively keeping her out because he simply considered her, and this is a quote, too fat.
It's awful. And that dynamic right there introduces the core conflict of her entire career. Here is a woman with this immense, undeniable talent, and she is forced into this agonizing battle against the sheer superficiality of the music industry.
Yeah.
She literally felt compelled to invent a fantastical story about suffering a traumatic head injury just to avoid publicly addressing the fact that her own bandmate was discriminating against her because of her weight.
It's heartbreaking, and it really forces a reevaluation of her subsequent success. Because she didn't just eventually join that group, she named it.
Right.
It was Cass who came up with the name The Mamas and the Papas.
Wow.
And when you examine their massive global impact, her powerful, distinctive voice was the absolute driving force behind hits like California Dreamin' and Monday, Monday. She was the anchor of their sound.
Her musical instincts were just extraordinary, particularly when you look at her signature solo track, Dream a Little Dream of Me.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of people, they casually assume that song was written specifically for her, but it was actually an old standard from 1931.
And originally, it was a fairly up-tempo dance tune.
Exactly. She completely reimagined it. Her version is uniquely slow, it's contemplative, it's deeply emotional. It really is a masterclass in vocal interpretation.
She just inherently understood how to serve the emotional core of a lyric,
Yeah.
rather than just showing off her vocal power. She could have belted it, but she held back.
Right.
But the tension between her immense talent and her public image, it never really subsided. So by 1968, the Mamas and the Papas break up, and she embarks on a solo career aiming for the absolute top of the industry.
And she goes big. She booked a 3-week headlining engagement for her solo debut at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas.
The biggest stage there is.
Right. And the contract was for $40,000 a week, which in 1968 is just an astronomical amount of money.
Unbelievable pressure.
Suffocating pressure. And to prepare for this massive debut, she felt she had to drastically change her appearance. She went on a severe 6-month crash diet. She ended up losing 100 pounds off her 300-pound frame, but the physical toll on her body was just catastrophic.
The details in the article are brutal. The diet resulted in a severe stomach ulcer and really significant throat problems. And then, attempting to treat the ulcer by drinking milk and cream, she rapidly gained 50 pounds right back.
Oh, man.
Her body was just in total crisis. And I think this really highlights the intense demands placed on entertainers, particularly women.
Definitely.
Instead of dedicating her energy to rehearsing her music for one of the biggest stages in the world, she was pushed into physically transforming herself to a dangerous extreme.
And that physical crisis leads directly to the disastrous opening night at Caesar's Palace. This is October 1968. Picture the Circus Maximus Theater packed with 950 people.
And not just any people.
Right. The crowd is filled with her peers. Sammy Davis Jr., Jimi Hendrix, Joan Baez, Liza Minnelli, Mia Farrow.
Just think about the psychological weight of that.
Yeah.
Standing in front of your most successful contemporaries while your body is actively failing you, it must have been paralyzing.
Backstage, she is running a raging fever. Friends are literally begging her manager to cancel the show, but she insists the debut is too important to postpone.
She felt she couldn't back out.
Yeah. So she walks out on stage sick, having barely rehearsed because her voice had been giving out during the week. And the performance is a disaster. Her voice is weak. It's barely audible.
Yeah.
At the end of the set, she actually returns to the stage to apologize to the audience. She tells them this is the first night and it will get better. She sings Dream a Little Dream to this half-hearted applause and just leaves.
And she attempted the second show that night, too.
She did, and it was even worse. People were noisily walking out.
The fallout in the press the next day was just merciless.
No, it's brutal.
Esquire magazine published a review titled Sink Along with Cass, and Newsweek compared her performance to the sinking of the Titanic.
And of course, the rumor mill immediately kicked into high gear. Within hours, rumors began spreading that she had been taking drugs in the weeks leading up to the show.
Right.
One biographer noted that Elliott later admitted to a boyfriend she had actually injected heroin right before going on stage.
Wow.
So between the humiliating performance, the brutal press clippings, and the swirling rumors, she plunged into a severe, deep depression.
And you really see the vicious cycle of media mythology at work right here. The industry demands she change her body. The process of extreme dieting destroys her health and her voice. The performance fails because her health is destroyed.
Exactly.
But then, the narrative immediately shifts to blame her character. They point to drugs or lack of discipline, rather than the systemic pressures that caused the crisis in the first place.
It's completely backward, and she was in a really dark place following Vegas. But hiding wasn't an option for her. This is where you really see her adaptability shine. She realized she had to pivot to survive in the industry.
Right, she couldn't just rely on the live stage anymore.
Exactly. So she leaned heavily into television. She became a beloved regular on talk shows, game shows, variety specials. She even guest hosted for Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show.
Which was a huge deal back then.
A massive deal. And she even voiced a character on Scooby-Doo.
It makes perfect sense, though. If the industry wasn't going to let her just stand on a stage and sing without dissecting her physical form, she was going to force the public to engage with her humor, her wit, and her intellect.
Yeah.
She utilized television to completely bypass the music critics and connect directly with audiences right in their living rooms.
And she had this incredibly defiant streak that she just refused to suppress. There's this great anecdote from the source material. In 1967, while she was in London, she was prosecuted for stealing bed linen from a hotel she and her bandmates had stayed at previously.
A bedsheet heist.
Yes. The case actually went to court, and the charges were eventually dismissed due to a lack of evidence. But when she returned to perform at the legendary London Palladium, she didn't shy away from the scandal at all.
She leaned right into it.
She did. She openly admitted it to the audience from the stage. She told them exactly why she took the 2 sheets. She said, "I liked them, so I took them."
That is just a pure distillation of her character.
Right.
She flat out refused to be shamed or forced into apologizing for her unapologetic nature.
Meanwhile, her private life was incredibly complex, often in ways the public was completely unaware of. For instance, her first marriage to Jim Hendrix, her old bandmate, not the guitar player.
Right.
It was entirely a marriage of convenience. They married specifically to help him dodge the draft during the Vietnam War. The article notes it was never consummated and was eventually annulled.
That decision really contextualizes her within the counterculture of the 1960s.
Yeah.
Vietnam draft was a source of sheer terror for young men in that scene.
Absolutely.
So putting herself on the line legally to protect a friend from being sent to war, it just shows a profound sense of loyalty.
She was fiercely protective of her private world. In 1967, she gave birth to her daughter, Owen. But Cass kept the identity of the father an absolute secret from the public, and even from her daughter for her entire life.
That takes a lot of resolve.
It really does. It wasn't until many years after Elliott's death that Michelle Phillips actually helped Owen locate her biological father, a musician named Chuck Day. His paternity wasn't publicly revealed until he died in 2008.
You know, given how much the public and the press felt entitled to consume and comment on her body and her lifestyle, it makes complete sense that she would aggressively carve out spaces, like her daughter's parentage, that belonged only to her.
Definitely. It was a boundary she had to draw. And by 1973, she had really had enough of the cartoonish public image. She hired Alan Carr as her manager. He was a powerhouse who managed stars like Tony Curtis and Anne Margaret.
A real Hollywood heavyweight.
Right. And he suggested a pivot away from pop and toward the cabaret circuit, so they developed a new stage show with a title that served as a direct manifesto. It was called Don't Call Me Mama Anymore.
That title is just a brilliant piece of branding. She is actively demanding that the world stop using this diminutive, maternal, slightly mocking nickname.
Yes.
She was demanding to be recognized as an adult, sophisticated solo artist.
And it worked. It was a massive success. She took Vegas by storm the second time around, premiering at the Flamingo. The reviews were glowing. The Las Vegas Sun wrote that she served notice she was here to stay.
Incredible.
There were standing ovations, no empty seats. She finally conquered the city that had publicly broken her 5 years earlier.
It is the triumphant narrative arc she absolutely deserved. She reclaimed her name, her voice, and her standing in the entertainment industry entirely on her own terms.
But that triumph makes a final chapter of her life deeply tragic. We move to July 1974. Cass is back in London playing 2 weeks of solo concerts at the London Palladium. She's receiving standing ovations night after night.
The pinnacle.
Yeah. On her last night, she actually made an international call to Michelle Phillips, crying tears of joy over how successful the run had been.
She had reached the exact heights she had been striving for since she was a teenager in Baltimore. She was respected, she was successful, and she was deeply loved by her audience.
But her final 24 hours are this whirlwind of celebration and physical exhaustion. She attends Mick Jagger's 31st birthday party. The next day, she attends a brunch in her honor. But attendees noted she was coughing heavily, blowing her nose, and clearly struggling to breathe.
He was really sick.
Right. But despite being visibly ill, she pushes through and attends a cocktail party that evening. Finally, around 8 p.m., she says she's tired and heads back to get some sleep. She retires to flat 12, 9 Curzon Place in the Mayfair district of London, which was an apartment she was borrowing from the singer Harry Nilsson.
And that specific address holds a very dark place in music history. There is a haunting parallel here from the text. 4 years after Cass Elliott died in that exact bedroom, Keith Moon, the legendary drummer for The Who, would die in the very same room. And eerily, they were both exactly 32 years old when they passed.
It's so strange. Later that night, at the age of 32, she passes away in her sleep. The autopsy, which was conducted by a prominent pathologist named Keith Simpson, confirmed she died of a heart attack.
Right.
Specifically, the medical report noted her heart had suffered from fatty degeneration. Essentially, her heart muscle had been weakened and replaced by fat tissue over time.
A tragic physical toll.
Yeah, it was a direct medical consequence of the extreme, rapid fluctuations in her weight from years of severe crash dieting. And that was compounded by her lifelong struggle with obesity and periods of drug use.
Her cardiovascular system simply couldn't take the strain anymore. The pendulum swings of starving herself to meet industry standards, followed by rapid weight gain, alongside the grueling schedule of a touring performer. It all just caused irreversible damage to her heart.
But that medical reality isn't what the public remembers. The actual cause of death was almost immediately overshadowed by the most infamous rumor of her entire career: the myth that Cass Elliott choked to death on a ham sandwich.
And this is exactly where the story shifts from a tragic biography to a profound commentary on media manipulation.
Yeah.
Because that ham sandwich rumor wasn't just a misheard quote. It wasn't a sloppy piece of journalism. It was a deliberate, calculated PR spin planted by her own team.
In 2020, a journalist and friend of Elliott's named Sue Cameron finally confessed. She admitted that she was the one who put that false ham sandwich story into the official obituary for The Hollywood Reporter.
Wow.
And she did it because Cass Elliott's manager, Alan Carr, explicitly begged her to plant the lie.
You see, Carr understood the media landscape of the 1970s. He knew that given her history, rumors of a drug overdose would be immediate. In his mind, planting a somewhat cartoonish falsehood about food was actually preferable to any implication that her death was associated with substance abuse.
But wait, looking at it objectively, was Carr entirely wrong to do that? I mean, given how aggressively the 1970s press destroyed artists for drug use, wasn't he making a calculated, albeit grotesque, attempt to save her music's legacy? Just to keep it from being completely banned or written off as just another rock and roll casualty?
I mean, it's a pragmatic defense of his actions, certainly. You can definitely argue he was trying to protect her catalog. But the result was undeniably grotesque. By trying to avoid the stigma of drugs, he leaned entirely into the stigma of her weight.
Right.
It turned her final moments into a cruel punchline. It cast this tawdry light over her legacy, and it threatened to overshadow her mighty, underappreciated talent for decades. Instead of remembering a powerhouse vocalist who fought tooth and nail against a superficial industry, the public remembered a joke.
Ellen Naomi Cohen was a woman who defined the sound of a generation. She battled an industry that constantly told her she wasn't right, she wasn't thin enough, she didn't fit the mold. She reclaimed her identity, triumphed on the biggest stages in the world, and then, in the end, had her actual human legacy obscured by a desperate PR lie engineered by the very people supposed to protect her.
Doing deep dives like this really matters because it reminds us to look past the punchline. The accepted, universally repeated narrative is rarely the whole story.
Absolutely.
Cass Elliott's life is a profound historical reminder of our responsibility as consumers of media to seek the human truth behind those sensational headlines.
Before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We just saw the machinery of 1970s PR at work, where a manager could literally call a reporter and invent a historical fact that survived for decades. Think about how this machinery operates today. With the rise of social media, do artists actually have more power to correct these false narratives in real time? Or does the modern internet simply allow the ham sandwich myths of the world to spread infinitely faster, becoming permanent reality before the truth even has a chance to put its boots on? Think about it. We'll see you next time.